When you think of video game platforms known for their fighting game libraries, there's probably a few consoles that come to mind first. Sega Saturn, PS1, Neo Geo, hell, the Neo Geo Pocket, and of course, the greatest to ever do it. You know what console you probably don't think of though? The Wii U. Coming in at just under 14 million units sold for the 5 years it was supported on the market, the Wii U is largely seen as a commercial failure. That's not to say there isn't some good stuff on it, because there is, but the lion's share of things worth playing on it ended up on the platform's far better received successor, the Nintendo Switch. If you're a fan of first-party Nintendo games, there's some objectively great stuff on Wii U, but if you're a fan of certain genres, well, the pickings are admittedly a little slim. And no genre is that more evident for it than fighting games. I'll be blunt, the Wii U has a pretty hilarious fighting game library. Not because the games it does have are bad, but more so because there aren't really a lot of them. In fact, there's really only 6 or 7, and I'm being very generous classifying some of these as fighting games. This video isn't meant to dunk on the Wii U though, that's been a road well traveled at this point, but instead to examine a corner of the console's library near and dear to my heart and see if these fighters bring anything to the table worth talking about. I'll be keeping things strictly to the Wii U here, so I won't be counting Wii U Virtual Console games, Wii games via backwards compatibility, or Wii Virtual Console games through backwards compatibility. That means no Turbo Revival, no Tatsunoko vs Capcom, and none of the assload of Neo Geo fighting games you could have gotten on Wii Virtual Console. We'll be keeping this strictly to the Wii U library. With that sorted, let's get started with some Marvel, baby. But probably not the one you were hoping for. You think of Marvel fighting games, and of course the first game that's going to come to people's minds is probably Marvel vs Capcom, and for good reason. It's fighting game royalty at this point, and has more than earned its place in the pantheon of fighting game series. There's been other cracks in Marvel fighters from other companies though, like Data East's Avengers and Galactic Storm, and EA's Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects. Even with that in mind though, when it was announced that Ubisoft of all publishers would be developing a 3D Marvel Arena fighter for the Wii U and Xbox Kinect, I was a little skeptical. I mean, I like to think I'm pretty open-minded, but you've gotta admit, that's a pretty bizarre proposition. Battle for Earth was announced shortly after the cancellation of an Avengers game slated to be a first-person brawler centered around the events of the Secret Invasion comic crossover. This cancellation was followed up by the cancelled game's publisher THQ selling off their assets, with Ubisoft picking up rights to Avengers games. Ubisoft decided to take that concept of a Secret Invasion adaptation and retool it into the game we now know as Marvel Avengers Battle for Earth for Wii U and Xbox Kinect. Now, Marvel and arena fighters aren't new to each other. The aforementioned Rise of the Imperfects was also an arena fighter, and while that game was also imperfect, there were some genuinely interesting ideas going on there, even if most of them weren't to my personal taste. Battle for Earth takes the Secret Invasion storyline and runs with it, with the game's menus and story campaign scenes lifting art and comic panels directly from the pages of Secret Invasion, penciled by artist Lanil Yu. Yu has a very distinctive art style that fit perfectly with the air of paranoia and distrust reading Secret Invasion is supposed to instill in the reader, so I'm very happy to see it get used here. I sure hope we got some money for that. The game opens with a cinematic showing Marvel heroes fighting villains, and it's pretty neat, even if the character models leave a lot to be desired. Venom and Wolverine look okay at least. There's a few modes available for play here. A story mode, a separate arcade mode, a versus mode, a training mode, combo trials, and even a tournament mode. Not a bad selection to say the least. Half of the game's roster is locked when you start the game, most of the cast being unlocked via progression via the game's story mode. The roster itself actually isn't too terrible. This game's release coincided with the first Avengers movie, so of course every major Avenger from that movie is here and accounted for. This was pre-Foxman as well, so there's a good amount of X-Men characters like Wolverine, Magneto, and Phoenix to name a few, as well as Fantastic Four characters in Human Torch and Doctor Doom. Even the Squirrel Queen is here. The story progression is somewhat boring though. You choose an arena and fight through several battle scenarios on each one, there being a little bit of dialogue tying the stages together at the start. It gets real repetitive real fast though. A big part of that repetition comes from the gameplay itself. I'm no arena fighter hater, but this has got to be one of the most shallow arena fighters I've ever played. It's weird. This game was developed for consoles, but plays and to some extent even animates like a mobile phone game. And honestly, that's an insult to mobile games, because even phones got King of Fighters 13 that same year. If the two platforms this game appeared on weren't already an indication, this is a game that exclusively uses either the Wii U tablet or the Wii Remote and nunchucks on Wii U, and Kinect on Xbox 360. You generally have 5 types of attacks you can do at any given moment. 3 special attacks, a generic long-range projectile attack, and a super kick move we'll get into shortly. These attacks all operate on a cooldown, and on Wiimote you do specific physical motions to enable these attacks, which feels awful by the way. If you use a Wii U tablet, you instead use the touchscreen to enable these moves, which feels slightly better but still kind of abysmal. There's also a dedicated tag button, and combined with each character having an attack that can immobilize your opponent briefly, you can initiate tag combos with your partner. This sounds more hype than it actually is though. In practice, it's a pretty jank combat system overall. If you manage to hit your opponent with the super kick attack, it starts a cinematic where you have to either repeatedly tap the screen or repeatedly do punch motions with the Wiimote to pummel your opponent. It vaguely reminds me of a one-sided version of that one-stage transition minigame in Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. As for character variety, I'd like to tell you that it's relatively varied, with Wolverine doing well close up while Iron Man fares better from far away, but the truth of the matter is that nearly every character plays the same. Every character has largely the same special attacks, similarly functioned projectiles, and super kicks are literally the same. There's also the game's special meter. When this is filled halfway, you get access to a combo breaker mechanic, which does admittedly have its uses. Fill it up completely, and you get access to an ultimate attack, somewhat analogous to a cinematic super in traditional fighting games. But every super is pretty much the same. Your character immobilizes the opponent, knocks them up into the air, where you have to repeatedly waggle or touch the screen multiple times to attack with whatever that is, before one final hit. Disappointing stuff. But hey, this game has a trial mode, right? Surely there's some hidden depth to be found in this game's combat. Well, there's 20 trials, but 8 of them are locked behind Uplay, Ubisoft's now defunct online service. It always sucks seeing games get delisted or having the DLC removed due to licenses expiring and such, but there's something extra shitty about a publisher deliberately locking content behind something like this. The game did have DLC, but surprisingly only consisted of early unlocks for characters and costumes, so you're at least not locked out of that, which is a win for preservation I suppose. A dumb win, but one all the same. This is not a good game. I'm already stretching a bit by including it here, but considering what we have to work with on Wii U, I take what I can get. The game got a physical release on both Wii U and 360 via Kinect, so it can still be purchased at least, though you're doing so at your own risk. I'd spend my money on literally anything else. Luckily for you though, if you absolutely need a fighting game with comic book superheroes in it on Wii U, there's at least one other option. Warner Brothers was a really interesting entity on the Wii U. They gave it decent support with their LEGO titles, as well as the Scribblenauts series. They also pledged support from heavy hitters in their catalog, like the Batman Arkham series getting a late port of Arkham City with some additional content, as well as Batman Arkham Origins a bit later. Of more relevance though, is NetherRealm Studios' second fighter, hot on the heels of the wildly successful Mortal Kombat 9, Injustice: Gods Among Us. If you're watching this, you know Injustice's deal. If by some chance you don't, here's a quick primer. Injustice largely takes place on an Earth where Superman kills the Joker after the latter nukes Metropolis and makes the former unknowingly kill Lois Lane and their unborn child. The DC heroes from an alternate Earth where this didn't come to pass get pulled into this one, now under Superman's solitary rule, with the only opposition being an insurgency led by this Earth's Batman. It's grim stuff. Injustice is NRS taking what they learned from Mortal Kombat 9 and making the fighting even more over the top as you do with superhero games, and filling the game out with enough content to keep you busy for a good long while. I myself largely prefer Injustice 2, but revisiting 1 was honestly a lot more fun than I remembered, even though I'm still ass at this game and only remember a few bread and butter combos for a few characters. Injustice's Wii U port on the surface doesn't look too different from the original Xbox 360 and PS3 releases of the game, having released simultaneously with those versions in 2013. In fact, the Wii U version actually performs slightly better than those two, having fewer frame drops overall, a rare technical win for this platform. Unlike the previous game, Injustice also allows the use of the Wii U Pro controller, allowing for a more traditional control scheme, at least if you play on pad. Arcade stick options were understandably fairly limited on Wii U. Also, can I just take a second to briefly glaze the Wii U Pro controller? This has got to be one of the best modern controllers Nintendo's ever made, man. The weight is just perfect, the battery life is absolutely insane, the analog sticks, while weirdly symmetrical, actually work far better in practice than they do on paper, and the D-pad is somehow better than the one in both the Switch and Switch 2 Pro controllers. Actual wizardry. Like on the other consoles, you get the story mode, a battle mode that more or less functions as an arcade mode with modifiers, a local versus mode, and Star Labs, which kinda feels like a cross between traditional fighting game mission modes and event matches in Smash Bros., with the loose scenario tying groups of missions together. Every character in the base roster has Star Labs missions, though this doesn't extend to all of the DLC characters, and that's where the Wii U version's problems start coming to light. It's missing some content. First off, the Wii U version of the game is the only one that doesn't support WBID, Warner Bros. Online service that can be used to earn content in-game by linking games to an account, and even linking to certain WB mobile games. This sounds like a bad thing at first, but as we saw with Uplay in the last game, not having content tied to a service with an obvious expiration date like that can only be a good thing. A lot of the costumes that could be unlocked on other platforms by linking to the Injustice mobile game are instead paid DLC on Wii U. So, sweet. Only, the Wii U eShop is gone now, so if you want to see those costumes, you'll have to sail to high seas to get them. Also, not every costume from linking a WBID account was made available. Flash's new 52 skin is just straight up unobtainable in Wii U. Granted, because WBID has predictably been discontinued, you can't get that costume now on any platform if you didn't already have it, so the Wii U version's in good company there at least. On other platforms, the Red Sun DLC was a pre-order bonus, adding in new costumes and a set of DLC Star Labs missions with their own storyline centered around the Superman Elseworld story of the same name. It was made available as paid DLC on Wii U, but that was as far as Star Labs mission got on that platform. On other platforms, every DLC character except for Zatanna and Martian Manhunter got DLC Star Labs missions. Not only do none of the DLC characters get any here, Wii U is actually missing 2 DLC characters and an entire balance patch. Due to either bad sales, dev teams being stretched thin, or both, DLC support for the Wii U version of Injustice was abruptly cut short, and this was something that also happened to the other big WB game that launched on Wii U that same year, Batman Arkham Origins. Wii U only ever got Zod, Scorpion, Batgirl, and Lobo as DLC characters, completely missing out on Zatanna and Martian Manhunter. Even wilder, Wii U also never received the game's final balance patch, one that notably toned down Superman, a character that had been terrorizing the meta a bunch beforehand. I will say though, it's kind of interesting in a landscape where patch culture ensures we're always playing the latest version of any given fighting game to be able to play a balance revision that isn't final. It's rare to see an in-between meta of sorts preserved like that. Even with the Wii U eShop closed, you can still download updates for games, so having the disc version allows you to update to this specific patch as long as you have an internet connection. So, is this version worth seeking out? Not really, no. But if you really have a hankering to play Injustice, the Ultimate Edition on literally every other platform it released on has all of the DLC characters and updates, even the Vita port. Not a dig against the Vita, by the way, that's a platform with a shockingly decent fighting game library. Still though, content parity aside, it's a surprisingly decent port of the game overall. It's a shame support for this version was cut so fast. All that said, let's move on to the developer that gave Wii U its strongest fighting game support by far. For as long as Tekken has been around, it has a surprisingly sparse presence on Nintendo platforms. There's Tekken Advance, which is basically a portable Tekken 3 remake, Tekken 3D, which is more or less portable Tekken 6, well, again anyway, and now Tekken Tag 2 Wii U Edition. Releasing 2 or so months after the 360 and PS3 release of the game, Tag 2 Wii U Edition is for all intents and purposes the version of the game with the most content. In addition to including all of the free DLC characters and stages that were available after the original launch on other platforms, the Wii U version has some exclusive Nintendo-themed content not seen in the other releases. Every character gets access to a Nintendo-themed costume, the costume dependent on the character. Paul gets Mario, Lily gets Peach, Deviljin gets Ganondorf, etc. They're pretty neat and have some neat animation flourishes all around, so they don't seem horrendously low effort, which is nice. There's also Mushroom Battle Mode, a Mario-themed battle mode. You fight on several stages with Super Mushrooms, Poison Mushrooms, and Starmen occasionally showing up. Super Mushrooms make you grow, Poison Mushrooms shrink you, and Starmen make you invincible. Standard Mario stuff. The frequency of the items is dependent on which stage you choose, with some stages having specific spawn points, like one stage where a singular Super Mushroom will spawn in the middle of several Poison Mushrooms in the center of the stage. For as simple as this mode is on paper, I honestly had way more fun with this than I thought I would. You'd think Super Mushrooms would be the go-to here, but Poison Mushrooms effectively making your hitbox smaller and making your opponent's hurtbox huge relative to you makes it way easier to get your usual Tekken juggle combos in. I only played against the computer, but I'd have to imagine this is probably pretty fun with a group of people. There's also a new mode as well, Tekken supporters. Have you ever wanted to prove your devotion to your Tekken main by giving them a whole bunch of money and going broke in the process? Then this mode's for you. In all seriousness, supporters allows you to take the money you earn by playing the main game and give it as a gift to your character of choice. The bigger the cash donation, the better chance you'll actually receive something in return, like customization items for said character. There is a cooldown period you have to wait out after giving money though, so be mindful of that. Tag 2 Wii U also features the return of a classic Tekken mode, Tekken Ball, returning for the first time since Tekken 3, playing pretty much exactly how you'd expect. If you choose the schoolyard stage for Tekken Ball though, its normal theme is replaced with this banger.
Fight!
Control-wise, Tag 2 actually has a few controller options. It obviously supports the tablet, it supports the Wii U Pro controller, and it also supports the Wii Classic controller and Classic Controller Pro as long as you have Wiimotes to hook them up to. That last option is much appreciated, not just for having more options, but it also allowed for people that owned any arcade sticks for the original Wii to use them with this game since they also connect the same way. I own the Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Wii arcade stick and can also use it for Tag 2 here, though I suck at Tekken on stick. I'm awful at Tekken with a pad too, but that's besides the point. One of the very few arcade sticks produced for Wii U was also made for this game and connects via Wiimote the same way as well, so I'm sure this stick was probably what was in mind when they allowed that functionality. The game supports OFTV play with the Wii U gamepad, but also allows you to use the tablet touchscreen instead as a command shortcut menu similar to a lot of fighting games on 3DS, including Tekken 3D itself. What commands you have here can be changed in the customization menu in the game options. So feature-wise, this game is pretty solid and looks great too, all things considered. It does have some frame drops the other versions don't have though, and more egregious, there's some additional input lag in the Wii U version as well. It's nowhere near unplayable, but it does make it the least optimal version of the game to play. If you have Tag 2 elsewhere, there's really no reason to seek this port out unless you really need Tekken Ball in your life. But if you don't have it and just happen to own a Wii U, it's a pretty fun time. Also, the disc icon is a little pixel heihachi, and I think that's neat. The Nintendo bonuses mixed in with Tekken are pretty neat, but if that wasn't enough Nintendo associated IP in your Tekken soup for you, well, you're in luck. Pokken Tournament is a 3D fighting game developed by Bandai Namco and released in arcades in Japan in 2015 before getting a Wii U port in 2016, making this one of the later Wii U releases in this video. As the name suggests, it combines elements of Tekken with the Pokemon series, making for a unique fighting game that doesn't really play like anything I've tried before or after this. Gameplay generally has two phases, a field phase and a duel phase. Field phase is 3D combat oriented, playing more similarly to an arena fighter, whereas duel phase switches to a 2D perspective, playing more like a traditional fighting game. Certain attacks like throws and specific special moves can automatically transition you from one phase to another, so there's some strategy that comes from initiating the phase that best suits you in the moment. The control scheme is pretty simple as well. There's light attacks, heavy attacks, a jump button, and a special attack button all mapped to the standard phase buttons. There's additional actions that can be done with certain button combinations as well, like throws and counterattacks. Similarly, the Pokemon's rock paper scissors style weakness system, there's an attack triangle that basically dictates interactions here. Regular attacks beat throws, throws beat counterattacks, and the counterattacks beat regular attacks. In practice though, I'd say it's most similar to the strikes, throws, and holds attack triangle from Dead or Alive. There's also a partner system that operates on a cooldown that's somewhat similar to the assist characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 1 or the strikers in the NES Saga King of Fighters games. These feature Pokemon not on the main playable roster and can either deal damage, buff you, or debuff your opponent. Speaking of the roster, there's a mix of fan favorites and some slightly offbeat choices from across the series to choose from. It's a Pokemon game, so of course Gen 1 gets a ton of love, featuring two distinct Pikachu variants, Charizard, my personal favorite character in this game, Gengar, Machamp, and Mewtwo was an unlockable playable character, as well as Shadow Mewtwo, a special variant that can also be unlocked. As an aside, the game comes with a reusable amiibo card that allows you to temporarily unlock Shadow Mewtwo without having had to fulfill its actual unlock conditions. Gen 2 and Gen 5 get the least amount of love here, getting 1 rep each, but probably get the two most interesting characters on the roster, Suicune and Chandelure. Chandelure in particular is the closest thing this game has to a pure zoner, and it's actually pretty fun to use. Gen 3 gets a bit of a shine with Blaziken, Sceptile, Gardevoir, and since it was the newest gen at the time, Generation 6 gets a nod with second stage X and Y Firestarter Braixen. Gen 4 gets 3 reps too, Weavile, Garchomp, and of course Gen 4 poster boy Lucario, who also features alongside Pikachu on the game's cover art. Back to the gameplay, as you fight, you build up a meter. This is your synergy gauge. Once it's filled up, you can enter Synergy Burst mode, which grants your character some buffs, such as increased damage and speed, as well as light super armor against weak attacks. If the Pokemon you're using has a Mega Evolution, they'll transform into it in this mode, which is cool and makes it feel like an install in the traditional fighting game. On top of that, you also get access to a special cinematic burst attack that does a ton of damage and are a joy to watch, though you can only do them once per round. Big fan of Blaziken's in particular, where he just rider kicks the shit out of the opponent. Speaking of references, I guess it's to be expected that there'd be a bunch of Tekken send-ups in the cast, but they really went above and beyond here. There's obvious ones like Pikachu having a much simplified Electric Wind God Fist, and deeper cuts like Blaziken having Pulse and Complete Somersault of all things. Like most fighting games, you have a standard suite of modes: Single Battle, Local Versus, Online, though this can't be played outside of custom homebrew servers now, Training Mode, and Ferrum League, which basically functions as arcade mode for this game. Playing through Ferrum League unlocks content like new stages and new partner Pokemon, as well as the aforementioned Mewtwo and Shadow Mewtwo. Pokken has the most controller support of any game we've covered in this video so far, allowing use of the Wii U tablet, the Wii and Nunchuck combo, the Wii U Pro controller, and the Wii Classic controller via Wiimote. There was also an additional Pokken pad that you can buy for this game as well. Interesting because it was largely the same controller that the arcade version used. I don't own it myself, so I can't speak to its quality, but I can say I haven't heard anything bad about it. This is still a fighting game I have trouble wrapping my head around, and one of these days I really do want to try to get a better understanding of it, because what's here is really cool, but for now, just getting by with general fighting game fundamentals is enough for me to have fun. That said, is this worth getting? Not if you have a Switch. As mentioned earlier, the Wii U version released after the arcade version, but the arcade version was periodically updated with additional characters, none of which ended up coming to Wii U. In 2017, Pokken Tournament DX was announced for the Switch, featuring the base roster of the Wii U version, plus the additional arcade-only characters like Empoleon and Scizor, and then included a new character on top of that, Gen 7 newcomer Decidueye. On top of that, DX also got additional playable characters in the form of Blastoise and Honedge, as well as some additional partner Pokemon, Mew and Celebi among them. If you have a Switch, and I imagine most people with a Wii U probably do, there's literally no reason to get this on Wii U. Even the Pokken controller I mentioned has a Switch variant that can be had for decent prices. It looks better, runs better, has more content, can be played on the go, and while the player base is probably small, it's better than the non-existent one on Wii U thanks to online being shut down on the platform. The Switch version even has a demo if you want to give the game a try, though it does have an annoying 15 fight limit, a silly carryover from the 3DS and Wii U days of limiting playable demos. But we should probably talk about the other fighting game on Wii U with Pokemon in it, and incidentally, also developed by Bandai Namco. Alright, I'm not gonna patronize you guys here. I know that you know that this is probably the Wii U fighting game. When I bought my original Wii U, this was the game I bought it for, and I suspect this was the case for a lot of other people with Wii U's as well. Smash Bros. For Wii U is interesting, because it was mostly developed in parallel to its sibling game, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS, the first portable game in the series. While Smash 3DS was somewhat tailored for a more portable experience with its stage selection similarly reflecting handheld games, Smash Wii U retained many of the modes and features present in the previous home console game, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, with the exception of Subspace Emissary. Right off the bat, I want to talk about the available control options because I'm pretty sure this game has the most control options of any game available on the Wii U. You can use the tablet, a Wiimote oriented sideways, Wiimotes with nunchucks, a Wii U Pro controller, a Wii Classic Controller or Classic Controller Pro, a Nintendo 3DS, more on that later, and perhaps most interestingly, a GameCube controller with a special adapter. Smash Bros. Brawl also had a myriad of available control schemes on the Wii, with the GameCube controller support in particular being a no-brainer since the console itself was backwards compatible with the GameCube and natively had controller ports for it. Wii U had no such thing, but because the GameCube controller had become so intertwined with Smash Bros., a special adapter was designed to connect with the Wii U's USB ports that allowed for up to 4 GameCube controllers to be connected. On top of that, new GameCube controllers were also produced as well, bearing the Smash logo on it. The adapter itself is also forwards compatible with the Switch and Smash Bros. Ultimate, provided you're using an official adapter at the time of this writing. The 3DS can also be used as a controller as well, but there's some caveats. You either need to own a copy of Smash on 3DS, or have the Smash Wii U controller app on your 3DS. You can't get it if you hadn't already downloaded it before the eShop closure, but hey, I hear modding your 3DS is surprisingly easy to do. Once connected via a menu on both games, you can use the 3DS as a controller for the Wii U game, and if you've played Smash on 3DS, then you'll be pretty familiar with the layout. Even cooler, if you're using a new Nintendo 3DS model for this, you can use the second analog nub for smash attacks or tilts the same way you can on Smash 3DS. Connecting the 3DS game also allows you to transfer characters bearing one of Smash 4's unique hallmarks between platforms, custom moves. Custom moves were modified versions of special moves that could be unlocked and equipped to characters. The custom moves modified move properties like giving Luigi ice fireballs, or even giving Mega Man more weapon abilities from his series not represented in his normal moveset. You earn these custom moves by playing the various modes in the game, though it should be noted that this only applies to the base roster for the game, as DLC characters don't have any custom moves. There's also an equipment system where you can give characters items that either boost their attack, speed, or defense, with one stat getting boosted while another is lowered. Modes from both Brawl and the 3DS game reappear, such as Target Blast coming back from 3DS, as well as the Home Run Contest and Multi-Man Melee returning from previous games. Event matches also make their return from Brawl, though some matches also now have special conditions that, if fulfilled, can unlock other event matches. As opposed to being on a list like Brawl and Melee, event matches are now selected through a grid-like map that expands the more you unlock. Like in Brawl, these can also be done in co-op locally as well. Trophies also return from Smash 3DS and Brawl, boasting a unique trophy set from the former. Trophies are one of my favorite parts of the Smash games, and though I understand why they were cut from Ultimate, I was sad to see them go. Smash Wii U has a ton of trophies available to unlock though, thankfully. The stage builder also returns from Brawl, with the added bonus of now being able to use the Wii U gamepad during stage creation, which can let you stretch your creative muscles or create some monstrosities. Classic mode is here as always, but has a rather distinct form here. Instead of resembling an arcade ladder with an occasional branching path like in previous games, Classic mode is an elimination style tournament, where you can choose your opponent, some of them giving out specific types of rewards. It always ends with a multi-man melee against some Mii fighters, followed by a fight against Master and Crazy Hand though. As in Smash 3DS, there's an additional final boss in certain difficulties, Master Core. He's pretty much the same as on 3DS, unless you're playing on 8.0 difficulty or higher. If you are and manage to beat Master Core, an entirely new final challenge opens up to you, Master Fortress. This is a bonus level that has you traversing a dark area, looking for red cores to attack. Attacking them damages the fortress, while also unlocking new paths within it. It gets pretty difficult, especially with the acid that'll bounce you across the screen until you explode if you don't wall attack. I'd argue the hardest part though is putting up with the RNG bullshit that Classic mode and higher difficulties consists of to even get to Master Core though. There's also special orders. You fight in different match styles like horde battles or against metal opponents for prizes, the rewards getting better as you continue on, though part of the damage incurred in any given match is carried over to the next one, and if you die, it's game over. The more fights you win, the better and more plentiful the rewards, such as new music tracks, custom moves, and coins. Depending on which orders you've chosen, you'll either fight Master or Crazy Hand when you want to close out the run. This is a good source of coins in the game, especially important for those trying to play Classic mode on higher difficulties, though Special Orders also requires coins, or special tickets which can be also earned in Classic mode. With the new horsepower afforded by the console, Smash Wii U also features 8-player matches for the first time in series history. It's pretty hectic, and that's kind of the point, though it's localized entirely the stages that can even house 8 characters at once, like Hyrule Temple. I also find it a bit hard to keep track of where your character is during 8-player matches, since the screen zooms out a bunch to accommodate everyone. Again, it adds to the chaos, and that's fine for local matches, but it is a point of frustration when 8-player matches pop up on higher difficulties in Classic mode. All-Star mode returns from previous games, but it's inverted compared to Brawl in 3DS, where the order of characters you fought was based on the characters debuted from oldest to newest. Instead, on Wii U, you start with the newest character and work backwards. If you have the DLC characters, they're also included as well, slotted in exactly where they should be relative to the debut, which is nice. The last major mode worth talking about here is Smash Tour. This is a board game mode that's kinda half Mario Party, half Smash, with the minigames from the former being replaced with Smash matches instead. You traverse one of multiple boards and collect fighters as well as buffs for them. You can also use items to either immobilize or set up traps for other people on the board as well. Once all the turns have passed, you'll begin one final match with all of the fighters and buffs you've obtained. Kinda like the final confrontation in Smash Run on 3DS, or its progenitor, City Trial from Kirby Air Ride. This is one of those modes I initially wrote off when I first had the game, not really spending much time with it at all, but recently I've found it kind of fun. That said, I can imagine it probably wears thin after a while, especially if you need to grind it for coins or custom moves. Masterpieces also return from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, allowing you to play timed demos of classic games starring some of the characters in the game. Granted, you can't actually buy them anymore since the Wii U eShop is gone, but it's still a neat feature. Speaking of the eShop, Smash Wii U actually does have a good bit of DLC in the form of additional characters and stages, but unless you already have them downloaded or still have your Nintendo Network ID still attached to your Wii U to re-download them, you can't legally obtain them anymore. One interesting thing to note though, is that the DLC was cross-buy with 3DS, so buying the DLC for that version also allowed you to download it on Wii U, provided your 3DS and Wii U were linked to the same Nintendo account. This is something of a damper on the game, since the DLC characters are generally pretty great additions, my absolute favorite being Cloud. There's ways around it, and it's not particularly difficult to circumvent either, but if you want to do everything on the up and up, you're fresh out of luck. So is Smash Wii U worth experiencing in an age where Smash Ultimate is a thing? Honestly, even though Smash Ultimate supersedes it from a roster standpoint, I think every Smash game has unique content worth experiencing, and Smash Wii U is no different. Would I run out and get a secondhand Wii U for it today? Probably not, but there's enough here to make for a different experience from its predecessor or successor. I will say, getting all of the custom moves and equipment pieces in the game is kind of a grind. It's made easier if you have Amiibo or the 3DS version to transfer customs over with, but yeah. So, we've talked about Smash. How about a Smash clone next? There is no shortage of Smash clones out there today, but back during this era, before stuff like Nicktoons All-Star Battle or Rivals of Aether, they were a little fewer and far between. They were also more generally cash-ins, instead of the passion projects you see today designed by people that genuinely love Smash and how it plays. All that said, I guess it makes sense that the Kung Fu Panda game would end up aping Smash Bros. This one's kind of a low-budget affair overall. Not to say anything can really reasonably match Smash in those regards, but I think it's important to set expectations here. I've only ever watched the first Kung Fu Panda movie, so I'm a little out of my depth here, but I'm pretty sure the voice cast is a mix of actors reprising their roles from the films, as well as the extended universe TV shows and spin-offs. No Jack Black though, probably too expensive.
Who was the most bodaciously awesome Kung Fu master in all the land?
Po?
Yeah, Po was pretty awesome, but...
Po!
Oh, hey, Master Shifu.
The game itself is pretty sparse content-wise as well, only having a tournament mode that doubles as the game's story mode, a tutorial mode, and a dedicated training mode, and the training mode itself doesn't seem to have any dedicated training options either. Wonderful. The character roster is comprised of characters from the series, some of which I recognize like Poe and Master Oogway, though surprisingly, there were a good amount of DLC characters as well. You can't buy them anymore though, not just because of the eShop's closure, but because the DLC itself was delisted across all platforms in 2019. Some of the DLC characters seem to be altered versions of the base roster characters though, so you're probably not missing out on too much. As for how the game plays, well, think Smash, but with 5 times less polish and you're in the ballpark. The general setup is nearly the same. It's a platform fighter with a percentage-based damage system. However, unlike Smash, where the higher your percentage is, the farther you go flying, it's the opposite here. You start at 100 and damage incurred counts down from there. The closer you are to 0, the farther you go flying. It takes a bit to kinda uncouple yourself mentally from Smash's implementation there, but you get used to it. I kinda feel like, considering everything else this game cribbs from Smash though, they didn't need to arbitrarily change the percentage system, but that's just me. You have standard attacks mapped to the Y button, while special attacks are on X, and like in Smash, doing a direction and pressing the button results in different attacks. Also like in Smash, the up special is a vertically traveling move that allows for recovery if knocked off the stage. Interestingly, a lot of the characters I played seem to have a similar down special, a simple counter attack. Yes, the devs mained Fire Emblem characters in Smash. I'm a Lucina main, so I get it. Also like in Smash, tilting the analog stick in a direction and doing a standard attack yields a different attack than quickly flicking it. Also like in Smash, the flicked attacks can also be charged as well. It also cribs Smash's shield system as well, though you can't grab a racked out of shield here. Hold it for too long, and the shield breaks and dizzies you, though the shield duration, to its credit, seems very slightly longer here than in Smash. Items can spawn on the stage as well, and these range from weapons that can be picked up and used by combatants to assist characters that can be summoned to do a quick attack. There's a blue meter under your character portrait that fills up after you fight. Once it's filled, you can press A to do an awesome attack, which are basically final smashes, just way less cool. There is one interesting mechanic I want to highlight though. Notice the orbs next to the character portrait? These are your stocks for flash dodges. Flash dodge is a mechanic that has your character dash forward in the direction you hold, a blue trail sailing behind them. What's notable about this is that this can be cancelled from an attack, done in neutral, and can even be used to stop momentum from being launched. You can actually use this to do some tricky combos, or simply chase an opponent you up-aired into the sky for a kill from the top of the screen. This isn't something that saves the game, but it is a unique twist that makes this marginally more interesting than Smash clones of the time. All that said, I'd still avoid this. This game doesn't really feel good to play at all, and I don't even just mean that in comparison to Smash, but in general. The physics feel wonky, the character's sluggish, and the general game feel just feels off. This game also launched on a bunch of platforms, but I wouldn't say it's worth getting on any of them. There's far better platform fighters outside of Smash to bother with today, and on the Wii U itself, you're better off just getting Smash outright instead. As mentioned earlier, unless you're willing to mod your consoles, you're kind of asked out on the DLC regardless of platform here, so there's that to consider as well. It's actually kinda sad how many of the games we've talked about so far are kinda incomplete because of content being tied to storefronts or services that just don't exist anymore. It's a reminder that the content we consume in these games are fleeting, very much like life itself, and we should treasure these experiences with these games and the people in our lives while they're around, because you never know when they'll be gone. So, who wants to play some shitty shovelware? The last Wii U fighting games we'll be talking about today are also some of the last fighting games ever released on the platform, and notably the only ones that were eShop exclusive. You can't buy them anymore for reasons outside of just the eShop closure, but we'll get to that in a bit. First off is Steel Rivals. This one released in March of 2016 on the Wii U eShop, and notably also on Steam. Imagine Soul Calibur, but with a budget so small, it makes Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite look like Marvel Token. This is what we're dealing with here. I mentioned that it released on Steam, doing so the previous year, and it's extremely obvious that it's a pretty straight port. There's even an option to quit the game entirely that takes you back to the home menu that they absolutely just tweaked from the Steam version's quit the desktop option. There's several modes to choose from: a tournament mode, a survival mode, a training mode, a versus CPU, and local multiplayer mode if you have enough contempt for your friends to make them play this with you. The roster is actually kinda sizable. I mean, for an indie shovelware game, I expected a lot worse in terms of numbers. None of the character designs are really winners, but there's at least some non-human fighters for variety's sake. Each character also seemingly has an unlockable alternate costume, but we won't be playing this long enough to find out how to unlock them. And then, the gameplay. There's 2 attack buttons and you can block, jump, or duck. There's no bespoke mechanics or systems to really dig into here. It's basically mash to win, and if your character has a faster normal than mash, the win is pretty much yours. The AI also understands and does this liberally. Check out Morgan here, who has an attack that will have you in block stun for a few seconds before she can start it up without fear, because my character doesn't have an attack fast enough to stuff its startup. The game itself supports the Wii U gamepad, the Wii U Pro controller, and the Wii Classic controller and Classic Controller Pro via Wiimote. I suggest using the Wii U Pro controller and playing literally anything else. Steel Rivals is developed by New Game Games, who from what I can see, mostly made eShop shovelware for the 3DS and Wii U, mostly pinball games, and a frankly concerning number of breakout clones. Steel Rivals actually seems to be their very first release. I have to imagine this was probably made by a small team, if not a single person, and while it's not good, making and shipping a game is more of a contribution to the medium than I've ever made, so I'm not going to shame them further for trying. What I am going to shame is the $7 price tag this game had. You could buy a fantastic virtual console game on NES for that same price from the eShop back in the day. This game also launched on Steam as well, but was delisted a few years back, along with new games seemingly being banned from the platform along with a few other studios, in an effort from Valve to purge low-effort shovelware from the Steam storefront. Which means, there's legally no way to buy this game today. Probably for the best, but yeah. Steel Rivals, against all odds however, got a Wii U exclusive sequel in the form of Steel Lords, also released in 2016. Things are a little different this time around though. While Steel Rivals' biggest inspiration seemed to be Soul Calibur, Steel Lords is instead something of a send-up to a somewhat unexpected game, the chess combat side mode from Mortal Kombat Deception. Instead of a traditional character select, you control pieces on a board, being able to select which side of the board you want to start from, represented via menu choice as light or dark. When opposing pieces are adjacent to each other and it's their turn to move, you can move a piece over to it to begin a fight, which plays out much the same way as in the previous game. The light or dark alignment does serve a purpose outside of window dressing though. There's light and dark tiles on the board, as well as neutral ones. Fights won on neutral tiles are captured by the winning alignment, and fighting on a tile that corresponds to your alignment grants buffs like extra health or defense. I hope you like that board by the way, because it's the only stage in the game, accompanied by a droning, medieval sounding track. The frame rate is admittedly a little smoother than the previous game, but the fighting is just as bad, if not worse. The controls are largely the same, though this time characters have a special attack that can be done with the X button once the stamina meter is full. This is bad, y'all. I respect the idea. A full game that fleshes out the ideas of chess combat could be amazing, but this ain't it. The craziest part about all of this? When this game was available for purchase on the eShop, this game sold for more than twice the first game, being sold at a whopping $15. Nah man, I'm good. So there you have it, the Wii U fighting game library in its entirety. Are any of these games worth seeking out a Wii U for? Not really. Smash and Tag 2 are easily the best games here, and while Tag 2's exclusive modes and Smash Wii U single player modes are neat, they're not worth buying an entire console for. I think the Wii U might honestly be the first time a home console's fighting game library was completely outdone by its handheld counterpart, since 3DS actually has a pretty kick-ass roster of fighting games. Maybe a video for another day. As always, thanks for watching. Feel free to support me on Patreon if you're so inclined. And a special thanks to the patrons that already support the channel. Also, special thanks to my friend Catherine for gifting me the Wii U I ended up using for all of the footage captured in this video. She got so frustrated with the process of setting up this console for the first time that she said fuck it, this Wii U's your problem now, and well, here we are. Couldn't have done this video without her. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.